Yeah.
The thing is, short-term gains might sound like a good idea if you thought you didn't have a long future to look forward to, but these people are actually both thinking that they're going to live forever and making decisions that have bad long-term consequences, whether or not the short-term consequences are good for them.
Yeah.
It's a paradox.
Yes, I mean, thank you very much, Pete, for this detail, what you talked about, details, what you told us, you know, regarding this is the, you know, what we always, I'm a big fan of these, I mean, a couple of years ago, as you know, okay, the model was criticized as well, but we all know, for example, Chomsky and Herman brought this idea of manufacturing consent, right? That the media back then influences people. We know that now, right? And also the social media now, social media is misused for as a fake news and all these things that people get influenced. Now, why do I say that? The media, the conventional media, or the social media influencing people. But we know one thing for fact, right? And I'm always saying that we have tactics of inclusion and exclusion. That's what I teach my students. Tactics of inclusion and exclusion means, for example, when I live in Germany, Germany has a system of cultural traits and wants its members who live here, Germans or non-Germans, if you like it or hate it, the conventional ideas of this culture is this: you behave this way, you are going to be rewarded. You do not, you're going to be punished. And it could be subtle, very subtle, it could be obvious. Every society has that. Now, you can say no to this, right? That's what I always say. That's why I hate that Italians are like that, these are like that, these are like that. We can't do it, but you can say no to this. But it's very hard to say no to conventional level when you grew up in a culture. We all know that. And I know, as a matter of fact, and Beat knows it, you're a native speaker of English, and you know this, how it works, at least in English-speaking countries, is more obvious. If you go and listen to American Senate, and especially House of Representatives, every now and then you see a representative or a senator in the United States says, the power of the United States is one. Of course, economics, they control the World Bank, they control, you know, that more than half of the United Nations is funded by US, military, culture, look at the universities in the US, they have lots of money to fund many things, and so on. And one of them is Hollywood. That's what they say, the media. I was in Russia, right? Dennis, it's very interesting for you. Put on Russian TV to watch. I don't speak Russian. Everything is American. They keep changing. Everything is. I go to Mongolia and Ulaanbaatar. I watch American series in Mongolian, right? Everywhere you go, so this isn't why. Influence of because culture. Of exposure U.S. has through this, as American representatives and senators say, extended arm of the U.S. Why do I say it? So when something in the US happens, affects, because the US is also superpower, many places in the world. I think Nima knows that in Iran, everyone looks at American election. No one looks at Canadian election. No one looks at French election. Everyone wants to know what's going on in the United States because they know it will have a direct effect on Iranian population. This is superpower. Okay. When a superpower, which has such a power, with power comes responsibility. Oliver Stone, actually, if you go and look at him and his son, I don't want to go into detail, but I think Nima knows Oliver Stone's son's story, but okay, this is another thing. Oliver Stone himself made Wall Street as a criticism of Wall Street people of New York. He didn't make it to make them big, but people misunderstood that. Oliver Stone said, they completely misunderstood me. So, but people see what they want to see. In that movie, Gecko says, loyalty doesn't exist. If you want to have loyalty, buy yourself a dog. Human beings cannot be trusted. And I remember back then when I was working for 2 major banks here in the strategy department for leadership here in Frankfurt. Everyone, especially in investment banking, kept repeating the same thing. You cannot trust anyone. You cannot even trust your wife. You cannot even trust your children. You can trust no one. Okay, fine. This is the first. And then they kept saying that money is your only friend you have. And the third one is everyone has his or her own price. These 3 will shake the fundamental tenets and pillars of humanity. That's what people don't understand. And I really, in my humble position, I have to teach students, or I'm honored to do that, try to teach them not to believe in these things. I tell my students, everyone has her price, his price. Who says that? This is ridiculous. And now, just if you come with 1 million, 2 million, 10 million, 100 million, I said, you know what? I tell my students, you can come with all the money on this planet Earth. If I don't believe in it, I'm not going to do that. You think it's a lip service? You can kill me. I don't care. That much I say. No professor talks like that. But I say this example. I'm not going to do that. Do whatever you want. Dennis, do you know my philosophy in life? You remember me?
Of course,
You
I
know
know
me,
you
right?
very well. For
You know
all
me.
these years.
You know that when that guy Yanukovych was still in power and there were some uprisings, I was the only researcher. I was so angry at the rest of them who didn't want to come. You remember I wrote them and I just said, what kind of mentality is that they don't want to come? I mean, my Ukrainian brothers and sisters, I will come. You remember that, Dennis, right?
Yes, of course.
This is my philosophy. I'm not afraid of these type of things, and I try to teach my students not to believe. Loyalty doesn't exist. I tell my students, look, guys, maybe I shouldn't say that, but I have been coaching many executives, right? If you don't trust your wife, your children, your friends, your family, no one, the only friend you have is the money in your account. And you know what you have? Absolute loneliness. Because this damn money it exists on its own. It's a system on its own. It makes you so lonely and unhappy. And you should please don't go after this road. That's what I try to tell people. Unfortunately, Pete, what we were talking about, through this massive propaganda system, massive changing of tactics of inclusion, exclusion, value system. People always believe in these things. But, you know, from every culture, we can learn something. And I learned from Japanese martial arts I grew up with, and be it in Karate Kyokushin, which is a tough, or in Kenjutsu. When you fear the edge of a katana, take 2 steps towards it, and you're in heaven. This is in Bushido principle means you should always, you know, many Western academics don't understand Bushido. They say, oh, it's just they want to say that is the best way. No, Bushido tells you only one thing. Be aware you can die every second. Only this way you can fight. If you are not aware, if you think about your retirement, if you think about this and this and this and this, you might go to the wrong direction. Be aware we are going to die. You be aware of that. And I think that's a huge, huge problem. We are not aware of that. And this is the problem I see. What do you think, Dennis, about this problem?
You see, Manushekar, absolutely agree with you. And the science is not the same as economic, but we have the same problems here. You see, it's the same. I mean, a couple of problems like the foundation of economic and foundation of science as the similar as different types of human activity. But you see, the science, as for me, is much more sensitive to these moral things, you see, to these ethic things, because we have a couple of problems here, like a problem of trust, for instance, and problems of ethic and problems of personal relationships, of communication. And you see, the science, for me, the science is much more sensitive to all these things than economic. I have no experience how science built in United States, in Europe. I have no such experience, but I can tell you how it was here in this lands, in Soviet Union, for instance. So you see, in nearest in past, in Soviet Union, in science, it was a strict hierarchy. So this theft, it was like a kind of unofficial law, because well-known scientists, it was like a huge scientific enterprises, because for instance, we had a few famous scientists and other scientists who were not so famous. They worked for these big bosses, and wrote for them everything, you see. And then these big bosses published their huge books and gained the authority, scientific authority. And this was almost official system. And I suspect that such system was not only in Soviet Union. I think that in Western world it was maybe the same. See, you know better these things.
Yes.
But the time passed. Now we have completely another times. We have now the global world first, and now mostly we have the democracy world, because democracy principle, democracy system now dictates everything, economical and scientific principle as well, basement as well. So you see, I think this problem can be solved by the strong public opinion, by communication of people, like it was before in small society, small community. Now we have to spread this principle, this democracy principle, to largest society, to largest community, because of modern communication systems like the social networks and so on. And at last we have such instrument as reviews, you see. So everybody can write now reviews and make it well known to everyone. So no such moral criminals person, you see, who thief these scientific ideas. Nobody can hide now.
Yes.
As for me, I think so.
Yes.
So this is the solution, I think.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dennis, for saying this. Nima, what do you think about this problem?
To my experience, it's a very serious problem for us these days. Academic integrity, as you know, it's as old as academia, because we all know that it's crucial to efficiency of any academic institution. Actually, in 18th century, it was very much related to the so-called code of honor in United States. And then in 20th century, the pressure on faculties increased to publish more, to acquire more funds, and bring these funds and publications to the universities. Then it was necessary to have some kind of organizational control. We needed a kind of watchdog to control the faculties and the students and judge about their honesty. And an NGO started in United States. Its name is a Center for International Center for Academic Integrity. Unfortunately, none of Iranian universities are working with this NGO. And they have a small book called Fundamental Values of Academic Integrity. They are naming 5 main values: honesty, trust, fairness, respect, and responsibility, based on courage. And in honesty, they stress on the very important parameter that should exist in academia, and they say we should be very sensitive about plagiarism.
Yeah.
And plagiarism, sometimes we think that plagiarism is doing copy paste of someone else's text. It's not only doing copy paste. When I steal someone's idea, it's plagiarism, as it's defined in this book. And when I use someone's ideas or findings without referring to them, without citing them, it's plagiarism. And these kind of activities and behaviors, they are reducing the efficiency of academia in long term very significantly. Unfortunately, these days, we have an extra pressure on academia for earning money.
Yeah.
We hear very frequently that academia is a kind of international business. And actually, I like to introduce a very good book about this. Its name is Learning and the Marketplace. It's written by Alison Kirk. It's a very nice book. It's a very interesting book. Describes how describes the differences between academia and business. Working in academia is not exactly like managing a company. There are some differences and some points in common, of course. However, although there is a huge pressure on us to earn money for our university, we should be very careful about academic integrity. Let me describe an experience I had. When I arrived here in Iran, I started working in the university that I'm working right now. Shahid,
A second, please. Just Nima. Please just explain to our viewers. Yes. Nima did his PhD in Belgium, in Europe. So go ahead,
yes.
please. Yes. Yes, he studied in Belgium. So go ahead, please. Sorry.
Yes. And those days, I was receiving many offers from different colleagues to have PhD students to lead together PhD students and supervise together PhD students or master students. And after a while, I realized the many ugly things. I saw some of these students are learning many things from me and taking my ideas and my actual intellectual property, and then using my ideas, using the things they learned from me without citing me. And they're just taking my ideas, my intellectual property to their professor. Although I've noticed many mistakes and inappropriate data in papers they were publishing. After a while, I realized the problem is the dean of our university. The dean of our university was a professor assigned by government. It's a kind of Iranian thing, and he was trying to increase the number of papers and the money the university receives from the government by any means. And he was actively promoting students to cheat, to the culture data, to make data for their papers, and to fabricate information and do anything. I was seeing students who were coming to the university as honest people, as trustworthy people, and after 6 months or a year, you could not trust them and giving them a pen.
You know, Nima, excuse me, I don't want to interrupt you, but it reminds me that what we teach in ethics, and part of ethics, as you know, is virtue ethics, and virtue ethics is based on Aristotle, the Greek philosopher, and Aristotle was one of the first in human history, at least in the West, who said that we are social animals. We keep imitating each other. So part of virtue ethics is surround yourself by people who do virtuous things, who follow the path of virtue, avoid people who do vicious things, who follow the path of vices. Because we are social animals, we influence each other. And in virtue ethics, we completely believe in it. And that's what you say is completely right. And the second thing, if a company or a country or whatever has a disease which is called corruption or not respecting of values, we say often in corporations is a trickling down effect. Look at the CEO, you see the rest, because it trickles down. Excuse me, go ahead.
Exactly.
Go ahead. Yes.
In short time, this dean in our university increased the number of papers and earned some money for the university. But in long run, after about 5 years, the reputation of the university was significantly reduced. The value of the degrees that we are giving to the students reduced significantly. And in my point of view, the most important is our international position was significantly affected by his leadership. So the government had to change the dean. And actually this dean, after going out of the office, could not work in the university anymore.
Yeah.
He do not have, he is not teaching even one class these days in the university.
Yeah.
These days, although we should publish a lot, although we should earn money for our university, we should be very careful about our honesty, and we should watch and respect and guard the ideas, intellectual property of people. We really need it. Otherwise, the academia will not work.
You know, Nima, this is something very interesting what you say, because, you know, I had a very, you know, bad experience regarding a student who stole my idea, brought it to another professor in another country, and did her PhD based on what I found out. And, you know, all of you gentlemen, it was very important, right? Because I kept saying that Iran was a center of producing crucible steel, and you can see in my lexicon. But then I was talking to another professor who said, "Oh, Manuche, we should just forget about these things." بخور بذار بقیه هم بخورن, right? So means eat and let the others eat, or live and let the others live. Do you think this principle applies here, Nima, in such case?
I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry for this.
You know,
I'm
this
very
is,
sorry about hearing this.
you know, these are these things which you I mean which I really don't understand. And what you said about the values and the virtues, you said, it's very interesting. You said about the virtues, because what you told about academic integrity, like we use, you know, we have in ethics, we have different types of ethics. We have principle-based ethics, which is mostly based on Kant. There are certain principles I'm not going to violate. There are then we have consequentialism. We think about the consequences of my action, so the good for the majority of people. Then we have virtue ethics. And what you said about the virtue ethics, courage is important, virtue ethics. Loyalty is important for virtue ethics. Justice is important for virtue ethics. Temperance is important. Prudence is important. Morality is at the center stage, right? And what we see that many companies in CSR, right, corporate social responsibility, they use lots of virtue ethics and virtues to produce corporate code of conduct and behavior, and to say that we need to follow. And we say this only works when the CEO and the board, members of the board, executive board members follow the same path. If they don't, we are going to have a trickling down effect. You cannot have the corrupt guy sitting at the CEO and the rest of the people are expected to be virtuous, although they should. You cannot again excuse yourself and say, this guy on top was saying that. This is also, again, what we do not accept in, we influence each other. Of course we are influenced. I fully agree with Total that we are influenced by each other. Though the question of whistleblowing was like that. We have a case. This case was in, as I give it to my students. This case of whistleblowing, let's say we have a woman, her name is Liza, right? Then they produced pesticides in the United States. And you know that, you're a natural scientist, Nima, you know that. Producing pesticides, you have to go through lots of tests. And you know how hard in the US is. Getting something out to get a permit in the US is much harder than in Germany, for example, you know that. And then they got this, after so many tests and all these things, they got the permission to just go and give it to the farmers. Lots of money, lots of investments. All of a sudden, the Department of Health, which is very strict in the US, declares this pesticide to be what? To be detrimental and hazardous, or it's not good for the health of people. So puts a ban on it. Of course, as you know, this ban can be in the court or in other scientific studies. You can contest it, but it takes time. Companies struggling financially. So you don't know what to do. So the board tells this woman who's responsible for sales, listen, sell it to Argentina. So she's in an ethical dilemma. Department of Health of the United States says these pesticides, which cost millions and millions to produce, are not good for people's health in the United States. They're going to eat the damn food. They're going to eat whatever crop or wheat or whatever, and they're going to, it creates cancer, at least long-term. Or midterm, even midterm, it was midterm, not long-term. And, but then they say we send it to Argentina, and then she says, but Argentinians are human beings as well. The boss says, well, does Argentinian Department of Health says it's detrimental to health? No, it's not our problem, send it. So, you know, she's in an ethical dilemma. She wants to keep her job. The company can go bankrupt. She needs the job. Her, let's say, very egocentric. Her husband does not make enough money. They have 2 or 3 kids. The money they need. What should she do? So she spends like days and days, doesn't know what to do. She goes to her boss, says, I'm not going to do that. And then does something which in companies you shouldn't do. We all know that. Goes directly to the board. But then the board slaps her. Go and do your job, right? So what she does something which few people do. Goes to American press.